Not bad. That's pretty good. Welcome, everybody, to this week's edition of Military Trailblazer Office Hours. Thank you for taking the time out of your Wednesday evening to spend it here in the spirit of community, mentorship, and learning. I'm your host, Dave Albright. We've got Dave Knob on here as well. I'm a lead solution engineer at Salesforce and a Military Trailblazer. Each week, we invite a co-host or co-host to take part in the conversation so we can leverage their experience, expertise, and unique perspectives. The focus for tonight's session is exploring careers in business technology strategy and operations with Salesforce. So if you ever wondered how organizations research, develop, gain, buy-in for, and manage business technology initiatives, this is a session for you. So I'd like to briefly welcome and introduce our co-hosts for tonight's session, Alice Napper and Hailey Ramminger. Alice is a manager of business technology strategy and operations at Salesforce. She began her tech career at business as a business systems analyst at Epsilon, moved to Salesforce 5 years later to work in campaign management, transitioned to senior account manager role at Movable Inc., and then returned to Salesforce, where she's been in her current role for the past 5 years. Hailey is a business tech strategy and operations analyst at Salesforce. Hailing from Austin, Texas, go Texas, she's been in the tech industry for 4 years with experience in recruiting, HR, project coordination, and operations analysis. It's great to have you both co-hosting office hours with us. Welcome.
Thank you.
So, with that, would you each like to take a moment to introduce yourself further and share your Salesforce stories?
I'd love to go. David, thanks for having me and Hailey. I've been looking forward to this ever since I was invited. So really great to be here. So excited to see all these faces on the screen. David, I think you summed it up pretty well. I started my career off in kind of core IT project management at Epsilon, was there for 5 years and moved over to Salesforce. I'm in Dallas now, but I started my Salesforce journey at our headquarters in San Francisco. There I worked on client services and marketing programs for some of our key retail clients. I left Salesforce briefly for another role, and it was an amazing opportunity with the startup. Decided that I needed to come back to Salesforce because it was, the best place to be. So I made my way back. But when I came back in a different kind of capacity. I joined the real estate workplace services group and did that for a little while in Dallas. I helped build out the Dallas office. And in doing that, I met some of the business technology leadership team. And that's kind of how I switched careers from real estate to business technology. And I manage the team of, I have an awesome team of analysts. We're the strategy and operations analysts within business technology. And it is truly, one of the best teams I've ever worked with. We support some of the best leaders in the business. And it's been truly a great experience so far. And I'll let Hailey introduce herself.
Thank you, Alice. And thank you, David and David, again, for having me join as well. I'm much newer to the Salesforce ecosystem, so I joined my current role about a year ago. When I initially kind of started my journey in operations, I was working for an insurance technology startup, very small company, about 5 people. And I like to say that I did kind of a happy fall backwards into the operations world. It wasn't exactly what I thought I was going to do, but once I started doing it, I fell in love with it. So after I left that startup, I pivoted to a completely different industry and was working in recruiting at a boutique search firm that specifically worked with private equity-backed high velocity SaaS and tech companies. And it doesn't take long when you're working in the tech industry to keep hearing about Salesforce and what they do. So I decided to kind of take a shot in the dark. I saw an operations position open within Alice's team and decided, well, I'm going to throw my resume off into the dark, and I don't expect to hear back because they're such a huge company, but was fortunate enough and grateful to be here. And so, as they mentioned, I'm based out of Austin, Texas, as well, and working under Alice's amazing team.
That's awesome. Thank you both, and thank you for joining us. For those joining for the first time, I always like to briefly explain the purpose of these office hours before we open the floor for questions and discussion. These sessions are an informal get-together for gathering with military trailblazers and allies to explore non-technical Salesforce career and branded relating topics to help you achieve your professional development and career-related goals. This next hour is intended to be an opportunity for collaborative mentorship. Everyone on the call is encouraged to step up and help answer questions from your perspective, which will provide additional diversity of experience to the answers given. Please keep an eye on the chat window during tonight's session. I and others on this call share a lot of great information there, including learning, networking, and employment opportunities. If you'd like to ask a question at any point during today's session, please feel free to do so. If you don't feel as comfortable speaking up, you can also post your questions in the chat. We'll do our best to monitor the chat window and also be looking for raised hands. Finally, tonight's session is being recorded. If you'd like to share an attribution-free comment, please let us know before speaking and we'll make sure it's edited out of the final recording. So let's get right into it. For those unacquainted with business technology strategy and operations, can you two provide an overview of what roles are typically included in this capability area and what their responsibilities would be?
Yes, I know that is a very long name for a team. You all are probably like, wow, so many words put together to describe one team. So, I'll start at the top. Business technology is the org that we belong to. At most other companies, they call this IT. But at Salesforce, we refer to our organization as business technology, and it's truly, we bring business and IT together. Our CIO, Juan Perez, is an amazing leader. He's really come into our organization and really started a great transformation. We build technology and deliver solutions as effectively as possible for the company as a whole, while we keep everything safe and secure. Now, talking about strategy and operations, that's kind of my business unit, if you will. We're part of the strategy and enablement solution delivery group. Again, lots of words, but I'll get to explaining what those words mean here in a moment. So our overall team consists of 4 key groups, and I'll just touch upon them in case it sparks interest in you. So the 4 kind of groups, we've got a BT planning and business management group. This team really leads our location and workforce strategy, headcount management, data and analytics, and supports overall research for our organization. Another group within our org is our BT vendor management team. So this team really drives our sourcing strategy. It defines how we and when we hire contingent workforce, the standards and procedures we build around our contingent workforce, and they help determine, cost savings, and they overall help manage performance. Then we've got strategy and operations. This team is really helping out with the CIO programs, intaking new priorities, and overseeing continuous improvement efforts. And finally, the team that I'm on, that I'm here to talk about, is we're referred to as solution delivery group, business operations and support. So my team, in a nutshell, we support our senior vice presidents within business technology. We're kind of lovingly referred to as their mini chief of staffs. So we essentially help them with all kinds of initiatives. We help drive a consistent employee experience for those in BT. We help with consistent processes, reporting, and various operational programs. So I know that's a lot, but hopefully some of those keywords have, resonated with you, maybe in previous work experience or some of the trainings that you've done. If you're wondering, what does that mean? You support your SVPs as mini chief of staffs. We do everything from preparing the content for their all hands when they address their organizations, company kickoff, big planning meetings where we talk about long range planning for the year. We help them with their quarterly operational reviews to make sure that we are hitting key performance indicators. We help a ton with V2 Mom. So if you're familiar with Salesforce, our V2 Mom is kind of our business plan for the year. Everybody has one at the company. It helps us stay aligned and keep our priorities top of mind. So we help our leaders with the development and tracking for their V2 Moms. We put together communications on their behalf. We help them with headcount and position management, and a lot around ad hoc analysis and financial planning and tracking. So that's kind of in a nutshell, a long nutshell, what we do every day for our leaders. Hailey, did I maybe miss anything that you want to add?
I think you did a great job covering everything. Like we're kind of joking, it's a long-winded nutshell, but it is truly a nutshell of what we do. I think that you can probably think of like the business technology strategy and operations team as just like the folks that will enable any CIO initiatives to run as efficiently and effectively as we possibly can.
Yeah. Go ahead.
Oh, David, I was just going to touch upon the second part of your question, but if you have a comment, please feel free.
No, I was going to say what we were talking about before we opened up, Alice, and that it's BT. You know, a lot of people think IT, right? As you're coming into the industry, you sit there in your basement and you code all day, and that's not it at all. Like, never mind the fact that even if you are a developer and you do code for a living, you go to so many meetings, right, all day long. And all that stuff is really enabled on the backs of BT. And so as you come into the ecosystem, you start to realize how many other little organizations, divisions, units are there enabling the company to go forward, right? Business development, sales, support, BT, all that stuff has to happen so that there can be little coders that sit in basements in the dark and code all day. And so, you know, you're just like, when you come in and like when Dave and I started at different organizations, different SI teams, you know, there's that IT section, and we all come from, and Alice and I were talking about this, and I'm coming back full circle. A lot of us come from a military background or, you know, military spouses, and you're used to being under-resourced. And so when you come into like enterprise level companies and you start to see like, wait, I can get that. If I just ask from BT, I get that. Like, wait, what? When I got here, it was like a kid in a candy store asking for different software stuff that I, you know, needed for my job, and I actually could get it. And so that's the kind of some of the different types of things that are enabled by BT. So that hopefully brings some context for the audience there. Go ahead, Alice, you were going to go with something else.
I was just going to address the second part of your question of what kind of roles there are within this team. We're actually a pretty small yet nimble and mighty team. We have 7 analysts on the team. It's grown really fast though, if you think about it. I was the very first analyst in a few years. We're now at 7. It's been a amazing experience, like I mentioned to you, seeing this team really grow. But we've got analysts, we've got senior analysts, but we also do hire associate level. So for somebody who is really wanting to start at an entry level, we do hire associates and interns to get, you know, them acquainted with what we're doing, and then you know, they can progress in their career onto the analyst and senior analyst track.
Go ahead, Amber.
Hey, thank you, David. Thank you, everybody. It's always great to see everybody. Hey, guys, I'm Amber from Jax, Florida. You talked about hiring associates and things like that, but I was really curious, right? We see these roles, right? The admin as the base level. But what are 2 or 3 of those things that really made you excited about this position or growing into this position? Because like you say, there's a lot of little niches. But for somebody like myself who's coming in, yep, we know admin's that base, but going from there, what are 2 of those, 3 of those skills I can develop if that's something I'm passionate about to kind of, you know, lean toward your way?
I love that question, Amber. Honestly, this role is so perfect for somebody who is organized, proactive, and has the ability to see big picture. So yes, it's important to carry out small tasks, but when you understand how they connect in the grand scheme of things, and if you're able to see more future state and not just short term, you will do so well in this role. Everything else I can teach to anybody who wants to join the team. We've got great teammates, and we enable each other. We do a lot of knowledge share sessions with each other. We learn a lot on the job, and that's kind of how this team has grown. We've developed this role really into what it is today. It started off as a very, you know, not to not to make it sound, you know, too entry level, but in the beginning, this role was a very order taker type of a role. And we've really transformed this role into more of a strategic thought partner to our leaders. As I mentioned earlier, like they consider us as their chief of staff, which is a huge deal. You know, we're working with them side by side on some of these business problems we see to make sure that we're continuously improving on what we're building out. So yeah, to answer your question, Amber, we hire associates, we enable them really well, and they can flourish in this role as long as they've got that mindset of working hard. And maybe Hailey can chime in. So I'm going to embarrass Hailey for a moment. Hailey started a year ago last week. And she's been here for 12 months, but in those 12 months, she has made such a phenomenal impact. And she came to us from, you know, a slightly different background, but she learned everything that she's done on the job. She was a sponge in the very beginning, and she's built quite a strong fan club here. Every anniversary, you know, we celebrate everybody's achievements, and I had an inbox full of leaders, partners, telling me all the things that Hailey did so amazingly well in these last 12 months. So Hailey, do you want to talk about, kind of address Amber's question a bit too?
Yes, and don't mind me, I'm blushing over here from all of that praise. I definitely think a couple other things that would be beneficial is like being able to look at things with an analytical perspective. One thing that I also think that's more of a soft skill is confidence, though, in this role. As Alice mentioned, the role has gone from initially being a bit of an order-taking role to now developing into a bit more of a partnership role with these VT leaders. And I think having confidence behind like the data skills that you have and just the general advisement that you may be able to provide from them from your own perspective is a great skill also, and obviously something you can still develop on, but I think having that will make you very successful in the role.
Awesome. Yeah, thank you guys. That's great stuff.
I think what you kind of described, Alice, when you were laying out some of the responsibilities of BT was really a jack of all trades, master of none, right? You were covering a bunch of specialties there, right? Like and helping to get the data and the direction for the V2 mom is no light task, right? And for those of you who don't know, as Alice said, that V2 mom is basically like the mission guidance that drives us through the year at Salesforce. And so kind of being a part of that process is no light responsibility. That thing gets made for a couple months, probably before it's actually published, and then it rolls down for another couple months. I think Dave and I have to start doing ours the end of this month. So if you think about it, for most of us, it's like your evaluation support forms, and that's kind of how that process works. So what all do you do to collect all that, Alice and Hailey? Do you have to pull data from the company?
Great question, David. And I think Hailey can probably answer this a lot better, but I'll kind of tee it up for her. So for everybody on the call, our V2 mom starts at the top. Our CEO publishes his V2 mom, and it kind of cascades down, but also cascades in a way that makes sense for each function, each team, each individual. And Hailey really manages one of our SVPs, V2 moms. She does everything from the development to tracking throughout the year to make sure we're hitting all of our goals. So Hailey, do you have any comments to add on how you go about doing that?
Yeah, I think when we're looking at it, as Alice mentioned, a lot of it does cascade down. But when we're sitting down on a more organization specific, so within our BT leaders, they each have their own little orgs that they run. So when we're really looking at that and looking at developing that, we like to have very candid conversations about like what the business expects of us, what our stakeholders expect of us, and what we're able to deliver on. And so we'll measure those throughout the year. We like to make sure that anything that we publish in that V2 mom is a smart measure. It's very detailed. It's very tactical in the way that we are making sure that we'll be able to track it effectively and all of that. So I hope that answers your question, David, but let me know if you want me to go further.
No, I think that's good. Like just trying to point out just how important that is, right? This brings me back to that top part of the opening, right? Like BT is probably not one of the glamorous things. It's not big. It's this little entity that covers a lot of fields, and yet it has a very important play, right? Feeding the B2 mom drives the company. And so no light feet right there, I guess is what I'm trying to say. And Dave Nava put the V2 mom in there, what the acronym actually stands for. You can Google it. It's actually very effective, even if it was just something you used in your kind of life and things like that. So one of the things we always like to talk about here as people are coming into the ecosystem, and I'm gonna key on this because Alice, you kind of pointed out Hailey and how the Ohana kind of feeds you a lot of feedback on your employees and things like that. And for those with a military background, it is a very different experience when you come into work in Salesforce or just in the ecosystem. And I think you've already seen that here on some of these meetings. The Ohana takes a little bit of getting used to the first day you're in there, when people are like, how do you feel? And how are you right now? And you're like, what do you mean, man? What do you want? It takes some getting used to, but that is really how the company operates. Like, people care, your managers care about you. It is it's very different. Like, if you come from a hard military background, it takes some getting used to. And I know Dave has done it, and I've done it as we've mentored people come into the company. You have to kind of tell them, like, hey, get ready. Like, your first couple of meetings, people are going to ask you if you're okay, and they're not like getting ready to fire you. Like, they're actually asking how you are, and it's going to be cool. It's going to be okay. But it definitely takes a minute to get used to. It's different. So for both of you, what are some of the hard and soft skill requirements that you see as important to your jobs with that lead in about the Ohana? Go ahead, Hailey. I'll put it on you. You got 12 months in.
Yeah, so I'm a pro, 12 months in, not even. I think some of the more hard skills that would be beneficial to have in this type of role is obviously some program management, project management type of skills, I should say, data analytics, being comfortable with modeling data and reporting out on data so you can help drive some of those data-driven decisions. Also, going back to a bit of the Ohana note, I think high impact teaming is a really great skill to develop out on. And as Alice mentioned, obviously, organization, detail orientation, really thorough communication skills will all be really great hard skills to have. I think looking at some of those softer skills, like I said, I guess communication in that style could be a bit of a softer skill, but I also think going along the veins of confidence and skills like that. Alice, I'll let you fill in the blanks where I missed.
Oh, I think you did a great job, Hailey. To specify, I think Tableau would be a really great hard skill. If you haven't already checked out Tableau and Trailhead, I highly recommend it. That will help you not even just with the Salesforce ecosystem, but just any other company. I feel like Tableau is really being adopted at so many different organizations. That's definitely a critical skill. I would say for the soft skills, being a great team player, I know you all are very good at that. Being inquisitive and finding joy in being able to get to solutions when you have an ambiguous challenge in front of you. Being collaborative, being solution oriented, having a bias for action. So being really proactive is very important for this job. And then on the customer facing front, our customers, Hailey and I, as I mentioned, we service our leaders. So they're our customers and we're very customer centric. In everything that we do, we make sure that we have an operationally, excellent mindset at the forefront, because we want to make sure that we're doing, more with less and in a faster, more automated fashion. We talk a lot about, being fanatical about identifying and reducing waste. So there's a lot of repetitive work throughout our large organization. Being able to identify that and stop doing that kind of work and really, focusing efforts on, doing something well and not mediocre in a lot of different ways. And then our CIO, Juan Perez, I mentioned to you, he really has come to our company with, such a strong mindset for being process and operations driven. But something he says that really resonates with me is being constructively dissatisfied with everything. And that's just, a way to say, always look for things that need improvement. Don't settle. Always have that mindset where you're just looking for ways to improve, even if it's a small action. Those small actions really add up. One thing that he likes to share with us, so he used to be the CIO of UPS. And, in his time there, he talked about every little turn that a UPS driver makes adds to the bottom line. When you have drivers, so many drivers all across the world, and if they're making that same step that's not needed, think about the waste that it produces. So yeah, I've learned so much from working with our BT leadership team, and it's pushed me every day to be better in my role. And I feel like these soft skills aren't just important for this role, but just for any type of a operations role that you might be interested in. There's just always a better way to do things, and being open to searching for that and implementing that is what's going to really make you stand out.
Excellent. Thank you. Yeah, I once read that UPS does their route planning to always take right turns, because obviously you have to wait for a left turn light, which actually makes sense. So I've actually tried to do that before. Like if you're planning to go to the grocery store and you got somewhere else you got to go in the gas station, like just try and see if you can do it on right turns only. But yeah, it's interesting to always look for those improvements. You said a couple other things, kind of Hailey brought it up a little bit, and Alice, you talked about Tableau. Here, the last couple of weeks, as we've had the office hours on, we've definitely kind of talked about a little bit of the maybe downturn, I guess, for IT industry lately, and how do you kind of increase your marketability and data analysis, data-driven decision-making, Tableau are all really heavy. I think every customer I work with on the pre-sale side is always looking for data-driven decision-making, right? So getting yourself some experience. Dave Nava put in there the Tableau Trailhead and stuff like that. Just getting an idea of how some of that stuff works, right? Hailey mentioned modeling data, which is not something you intrinsically do in most jobs in the military. Probably do more now than when I was in, but it's not something that the average infantryman is out there like, all right, let's get my Tableau tables out and see what's going on. So, skilling up on that kind of stuff is, I think, important, because I think most businesses now are shifting to that data-driven decision-making, right? How do I pull the data to answer the questions that we have? How do we visualize it? And we hear it almost every time we ask that same question with soft skills. It kind of comes back to the same thing over and over. Just kind of, just being someone that you want to be around, right? When you're working with your coworkers, you don't want someone to be, you can't be the hardened staff sergeant anymore screaming at someone. It's not going to work real well in the ecosystem or the IT industry. That poor coder in the basement will just start to get a little upset. Doesn't fly very well. Let's move on to some project and program management, because we kind of touched on that. So that seems to be the integral part. You've mentioned it multiple times in there, and obviously with some of the stuff you're touching. Can you describe some of the technology projects that your team is undertaken?
So I'll say that our group is not, your typical software engineering group where we're actually implementing technology solutions. Like our core group is more on the business operations side. So I'll touch a bit more on like the project and program management. We are a very agile group. We have priorities that are constantly shifting and new requests that are coming in. So for us, it's more about staying on top of all of the various asks. We recently have started using Gus, which is an internal work management tool. And so we put everything in there. We've got, epics and user stories, but we don't have like a scrum master on our team, like a typical, software engineering team would have. We are pulled into various projects at various different stages of those projects. So we just have to be really nimble and be able to pivot and jump in on any kind of a project. So I feel like our group is slightly an anomaly in that, we're not always working on IT projects from start to finish. We kind of are more on the strategic planning side for some of those initiatives. Hailey works really closely with her portfolio lead in her group. He manages kind of the priorities and makes sure that, the teams are working on all the right things. So Hailey, if you want to add anything that I may have missed, please feel free.
Yeah, I think you did a great job in summarizing, and I agree 1,000% with what you said, where we're a bit of an anomaly, where we're not like your typical Scrum team where we're running in sprints and acting quite as technical as you might see in other roles, but we do still have, as Alice mentioned, the opportunity to be involved with projects, whether that is end-to-end or whether we're being pulled into an initiative kind of mid-completion. But there are times that we will use technology such as like Slack or Tableau to build out a Tableau environment to better model some trends and maybe people analytics or something like that we want to look at within our respective leaders' organizations. Or if there's a process that's really manual, we might say, what tools do we have at Salesforce that we could use to automate this? And that could be an example of a project where it's a little bit more technology heavy. But as she mentioned, a lot of them are quite different in that we're not running in sprints.
Yeah, but you just mentioned a little bit of agile process, Alice. Do you actually run agile or an agile-like procedure there or methodology with some of your programs and projects you're working on?
Yes, we do. But I feel like it's not as elaborate as, a typical tech type of a project that's run from start to finish. I feel like this role is perfect for somebody who is very interested in project and program management, but may not be super technical. This is like the perfect world where we get to work on all different types of projects from medium to large scale. And we know the lingo, but we can't code ourselves. But we're involved, and if technology is something that you're passionate in learning more about, like this is the perfect type of a role to do that without being in a technical role.
No, that's interesting. I've never really seen anyone kind of do like something like an agile methodology or something like that on a project. So that, I've done a lot of projects, a lot of big projects, especially in the military, and never really seen something as structured as that, right? Usually we had, the routine 2-week meetings and things like that. But when you mention agile for that, it's interesting to kind of tie that kind of concept to it. That's interesting. I had a thought that I was going to pull that thread on, and it went away. All right, next question then. When researching and selecting projects, how do you stay up to date with emerging trends in technology and foster innovation? That's going to be an interesting one, especially this company being at the forefront of IT, seeing some of the ChatGPT stuff and things like that.
Innovation is very important to business technology. We are constantly looking for better ways to do things. As I mentioned earlier, doing more with less, reducing, waste, all of that. We support our leaders in a variety of different ways to foster innovation. For example, in BT, we have an event called Hackathon, where all of the software teams get together, or actually any team within BT gets together to develop a business solution. And we help organize that event. We help the leaders, judge the event and pick the winners, but not even just picking the winners, but making sure that their solution is actually put into, production, into real life. I feel like technology, the only constant about technology is change. It's being open-minded to trying different things out, taking calculated risks. There's just so many bright minds in BT. It is really great to see so many ideas constantly being floated up by various team members on better ways to do things. We're doing a lot around Slack, tons of automation. And Slack is a great tool that a lot of other companies use. Many of you may have used it in a previous role. That's also something that I highly recommend that you get familiar with. But yeah, Slack is a great tool, and there's so much that we're working on to make our productivity better at Salesforce with Slack.
Yeah. So how does the process begin? Like for us to pick up a new software, right? If we're going to use a new software package, Lucid Chart is a great one, right? A lot of us use it for making ERDs and things like that, plotting out organizational structures. How does the process work where, somebody finds a need for something and we want to get it from the company? How does that go through BT, and how does BT decide whether we're going to implement that and give it to the whole company or just give licenses? How does that work?
There's quite a bit of vetting that happens behind the scenes before we, I think, roll any kind of a product out. And Hailey happens to help support our go-to-market group, so she may be able to speak more on that. But there's a lot that goes into these types of decisions, a lot of security implications. We need to make sure that whatever product we're rolling out is that we're considering all different, aspects of trust and security. Hailey, is there anything else that you would add from, I guess, a go-to-market lens?
Not quite from the go-to-market lens. I think, as Alice mentioned, there's so much vetting that's done behind the scenes before we start offering out. She touched on cybersecurity. Obviously, another one is just really evaluating our use case for it and determining, do we already have an existing product? For example, something that we always love to be able to do is use a Salesforce product to solve for one of the other softwares that somebody might want to implement. And so anytime we have the opportunity to use Salesforce for Salesforce, we love to do that. So there's a lot of vetting that goes on. I'm sure I don't even probably understand what the tip of the iceberg in those decisions look like, but there is a lot of consideration that goes into adopting new software.
Yeah, I can imagine, and I can imagine the number of, because there are a lot of amazingly bright people in this company and have a lot of good ideas. And sometimes, as we all know, too many good ideas is not exactly a great thing. All right. Everybody probably wants like 15, and I'm probably one of them. I still want my new computer, but that's not coming either. So just kind of dealing with that and managing the expectations of that would be a full feat. So yeah, we'll probably move on from there. So what kind of entry-level positions are available in business tech strategy and operations?
Associate level is kind of where one would start off their career within this group. We hire interns. We've now had, I think, 3 interns on the team just in the past year. And they come and, learn as much as they can. And whether they stay or move on, it's a great opportunity for them. And once you've kind of completed the associate level analyst and senior analyst, it would be your next steps.
Okay.
Just a quick question, and apologize for my voice. I'm a bit under the weather. But you mentioned internships. What's the access point, or what are the access points for those internships? Is it primarily college students, or are there folks that are post-college that have access to any of those programs as well?
Our Future Force program is a university recruiting, so it's actually twofold. We've got students that are currently at university now that come and spend some time with us. We also do hire post, graduation interns as well, who want to come and experience technology. And then we also do other programs like Europe. I don't know if you're familiar with Europe. That is for anybody who wants to enter into Salesforce.
And are those post-grad internships available on the Salesforce career site? Is that how folks would find out about them?
Yes, there is a Salesforce Future Force recruiting site. And Yumi asked, how many interns do we take? That's a great question. And I feel like a couple of other comments in the thread that I had seen earlier about downturn and layoffs. I don't think that, you should fret from seeing some things on the news. We are still a growing company. We're just taking a more measured approach in how we hire our workforce. Please don't let that stop you, though, from applying. If you see a role on the website, please apply for it. I'll make myself available to anybody on this call. Feel free to connect with me on LinkedIn. If there's a job that you see that interests you, I can help you look into it. There's a lot of entry points into Salesforce, whether you're coming in as an intern or coming in as a new hire. But you can find the positions on our Salesforce website, but also Salesforce Future Force website. Please don't let any of the kind of what you hear in the news stop you from being interested, because we are always looking for great talent.
Yeah, and we routinely talk about that here since, some of the layoff news, and really not just at Salesforce, but across the IT industry. Don't let that make you nervous. The ecosystem is still, there's a lot of customers of Salesforce products out there, and there's, a lot of people that are going to need admins, configuration, developers. So the ecosystem, still needs people, right? And we've talked about that over the last couple of weeks. So just to kind of keep people from really getting kind of nervous about it, especially coming into the ecosystem when you're new and a lot of people are pivoting out of the military, and it's like, oh God, is this about to all fold? And I don't think that's happening in any way, shape, or form. So we're at the midpoint of our session, actually a little beyond it because I don't manage time well. So before I forget, let's get a group photo for sharing on social media. Is important because we always need to think about branding. I'll plan to post this on LinkedIn and Twitter tomorrow. I'll tag everyone in the photo. If you only have your first name showing in Google Meet and want to be tagged, please feel free to include your full name in the chat window, and we'll add that in. And so for everyone who wants to participate in the photo, please unmute your video, and I'll grab a screenshot here in just a second. I'll get set up. Everyone can hold off on sending messages. I don't capture those as well. And I usually end up looking like an idiot on these pictures, but that may be my natural self. So here we go. 3, 2, 1. All right, look at that. Hey, I actually don't look too bad for once. Okay. So, one of our recent sessions focused on change management and user adoption. And that's a topic near and dear to our hearts here. And it's, as we do implementations, how that affects organizations. How do you maximize the user adoption when introducing new technology initiatives to the business to overcome any resistance to change?
Hailey, I feel like I've been talking everybody's ear off. If you want to start.
Yeah, I think generally, from my perspective, I try and lay out a pretty solidly backed use case. And when I say that, I mean, I try to come letting everybody know kind of the why behind we're rolling out whatever it is we may be rolling out. And obviously, I'll try to do my best to make it specific to the audience or the stakeholders that I'm rolling it out to. That generally gets rid of a bit of the resistance. I think working at an innovative company as well, there are times that you have to encourage people to flex muscles that they may not be used to flexing. And again, I think being able to drive kind of a data-backed approach and also letting them know what the felt impact of adopting your initiative is always really helpful. And then also, I mean, while you're kind of working on whatever it is that you're rolling out, making sure that the stakeholders have clear expectations set around what you're building and what you're wanting to deliver on, and make sure that it aligns with what they're expecting to see so that there's no surprises in the end as well. Alice, I'll let you kind of fill in if there's anything that you see a lot as well.
I completely agree with you in describing the why, but more so, you know, highlighting what's in it for the end user. The value that it's going to bring them is always a great way to be influential in what you're trying to roll out. I also think highlighting the early adopters and showing their success stories is a great way to get others on board. And communication. So much is so important. In this case, I feel like over communicating is the key, and not leaving anybody in the dark.
Yeah, you hit on a bunch of things that when I did implementation with one of the partners before I came to Salesforce, you know, watching adoption, you think you have made this awesome implementation, right? You have configured this gorgeous Salesforce product, and you're going to deliver it, and the adoption just plummets, and you're just like, oh my God, why is this not happening? And even I think as an admin sitting in an org, right, or sitting in an organization and trying to get the adoption to come up, you can't, like you said, Alice, with probably much better words than I'll use, you can't communicate it enough. You can't over communicate it. You got to really sell it up and down the chain. You have to make sure everyone knows it's coming, what features it's going to bring, why it's important. I mean, it can be quite a task to get people to join up. Akib, you have a question?
Yeah, thanks, David. So thank you both, Alice and Hailey, for that great answer to the very insightful question. So in terms of focusing on the whys and the values, how do you tell stories within those whys and values? How do you tell those stories to communicate to the end users to do a better job or effective adoption?
Thank you, Akib. That's a great question. I think being really thoughtful in how you craft your story and how you're tailoring it exactly to the end user. I mentioned showing the value. I think that's really going to make such a difference in having people adopt. I think it's, I don't want to say spinning it, but just putting the lens on it, that what's in it for the end users truly, I think what's going to drive results. And we talk a lot about data, right? So when you're highlighting those early adopters, showcase the data, have that ready to show the rest of the population that you're trying to kind of convert, the results. Hailey, anything to add?
I 1000% agree. I think it's so important to tailor, and like I said earlier, like really keep in mind stakeholder expectation management and understanding what they are hoping to see from you, if this is something that you're working collaboratively with them on. And also, as Alice has mentioned, really highlighting successful user stories as well, and making sure that if you're implementing something that might not directly impact one of your stakeholders, but falls within your stakeholders' broader reach, trying to find maybe some data points of how this automation implementation would provide X amount of lift in terms of hours spent within their team, and trying to explain it to them as like, this is all the time that you can get back, and trying to really make sure that like your explanation is as advantageous to the stakeholders you're presenting it to as possible.
Yeah, you know, and from my old Army days, Intel drives maneuver, right? In this world, you know, data drives decisions, and you really have to start from that data and push that. It's hard to resist change when someone's pointing at data in your face and saying, hey, right here it says this is this. Now, we all know we can bend data a little bit, but you know, in a trustworthy organization, we're using that data to make those good decisions. Akib, it looks like you have a follow-up, and that looks like Ryan has a question in chat. Go ahead, Akib.
Yeah, one follow-up I have. So first of all, I love this topic about user adoption because I'm going through this process right now in my org. We're going from an NPSP to a health cloud. And so I have a lot of nurses that I work with, doctors, MTOH, and health administrators. So many stakeholders, right? So who do you actually say the why to? Are you saying why to the leadership, or are you saying why to the end users who are actually in Salesforce every single day, doing data entry and everything else? Like, how do you balance that, you know?
I feel like in my case, I'm often in a position where I'm saying the why to every user involved, whether that's leadership or the actual user of the implemented program. So people that are directly going to be using it are obviously going to want to know the why and see how it benefits them, and you're going to want to work closely with them and get their feedback and feel the pains that they feel and all of those things. But when you're tailoring that for leadership, obviously your story will look a little bit different, but you can use those supporting kind of like why in those conversations that you have with perhaps like a lower level stakeholder to drive better adoption from a leadership or a leader stakeholder, if that makes any sense.
And that's probably where stakeholder mapping will come into play. So you're aware of the needs of each of your stakeholders so you can address them appropriately at all levels, I would imagine.
And I think, Hailey, you hit it. I was already thinking it. It's everyone, right? You have to, and the why is probably different at the different levels, right? Why to the stakeholders is different to the why to the users, but you really have to drive it home. And it's almost sometimes like you're pulling a water buffalo down the street. It can be a little rough sometimes. And Alice is probably looking at me like, you've done it wrong. And that's very true, right? If you've done it correctly, you don't have to drag the water buffalo across the line. They will see the value in it and they'll be interested and want to do it. But it can be, you know, when I came into the ecosystem and I came in complete pivot out of the military, pilot for 30 years, you know, all of a sudden I'm in IT and I'm doing implementation of Salesforce. And I thought I just sat in my basement and coded stuff and I made this awesome product and everyone would run away and confetti would fall on screens and, you know, everything was great. And it doesn't quite go that way. There's a whole nother side of it when it comes to the user adoption, implementation, change management. And so Akib, it sounds like you're going through that now. So I'm glad you're on here to kind of give that perspective, because it can be a rough uphill battle. Sometimes it goes super smooth. Sometimes everyone embraces it and loves it and all as well.
David, I didn't realize that change management is something of such interest to this group. We actually have a change management team within our organization. I can send you the name of that team if you maybe want to reach out to them to have a follow-up session. They can probably answer these questions a lot better than I can, because that's their actual expertise is change management. So I'm happy to connect you with them.
Yeah. All of that, you know, there are so many things like I know I didn't know about, and I've only been in this 3, maybe 4 years. You know, there was just so much that I didn't know coming into the ecosystem about all these other things, all these peripheral things that happen when you know, even if you just do basic config or you do a simple implementation, there's a whole bunch of things that have to happen, you know, the program management side, adoption, user adoption, the change management for those folks that are just stuck in their ways with a spreadsheet, you know. So can you guys speak to how you manage the risk management factors in your team's mission?
Well, we are always in lockstep with our leaders, so we're always working on the things that are high priority to them, and we always have the lens of keeping information secure. But I feel like in terms of risk management, just being in alignment with your leadership team and working on the right things really kind of eliminates, for what we do anyway, the risk management. Now, there is a separate team within BT that manages actual risk management for our overall organization, which could also be a great follow-up session. And they could probably speak to that a bit better than I can. But in terms of what Hailey and I do, it's all about, working on the right things with our leaders and making sure that we're prioritizing the right things and keeping certain things confidential, secure, and making sure we're all on the same page.
Excellent, thank you. Ryan asked, I missed it in the chat there, any specific certifications you look for on your team? Maybe a PMP or something like that?
Nope, I don't. I don't
Nice.
hire based on the certifications. I hire for the person. I actually really love hiring those with diverse backgrounds. I think that your background shapes you more than maybe like a certification does. And I'm not to say don't get certified. Obviously, that's going to give you, a leg up when a recruiter's looking at your resume. But for me, I ask my recruiters, find me the people that have done this type of work before in other capacities. I think having folks with differing experiences really adds to the group holistically. We have a lot of gaps on our team, and I would love to hire those that have done different things that can bring in experiences in other aspects where maybe I didn't consider it that way. So no, I don't hire with a mind of I need X, Y, and Z certification, or I need this many years of experience. I mentioned this earlier. I can train anyone to do a lot of this. It really just is based on if the person is ready for a challenge, because this job is definitely, we've got a lot going on. Hailey can attest. It's about somebody who more so has the mindset and is willing to learn.
I love that answer, because you see that throughout Salesforce, both in the ecosystem and in the company, right? Our team is somewhat homogenous because we tend to have military backgrounds, but even then we have people from all over. And as you go outside the DoD team, it gets much more diverse. You'll have people who are, I mean, we probably have one of everything somewhere in Salesforce. It's interesting how people have pivoted into IT. Because I think before I came into it, you thought like you had to go to computer science, get a 4-year degree in that, and a master's and a doctorate, and MIT in computers. And we have all sorts of people from all sorts of crazy backgrounds. So it's definitely interesting to see that. So we're coming up to the top of the hour there. I'll give you a closing question for both. What do you love most about BT strategy and operations? In other words, what keeps you engaged in the business area?
Hailey, you want to go first?
Yeah, I feel like that is such a tough question to capture in a concise answer, but I will try my best, because there are so many things that I have come to appreciate about this team and about this role. I will say broadly, it's an environment for learning. I'm learning something new week over week, both technical skills and some of the more broad, like project management, program management skills and things like that we're carrying through. And I adore that about this role. I also think that in my position, at least, like the leaders that we have within BT are so intelligent and such capable leaders, but they're also people first and very empathetic, compassionate people. So I'm new to my Salesforce journey, a year in. I've been in this role since I joined, but those are some of the things that really keep me interested. And I think staying agile and nimble and being able to work and just learn essentially as much as I possibly would have the desire to is such a unique experience to have in a role.
There are so many amazing things about this job. I would say, though, working with the leadership team has been a dream. I mean, you watch these leaders in their staff calls making tough business decisions, and you just have so much respect for how they run their organizations and how just forward thinking they are. You learn so much in that way, and this role is truly unique in that we're, you know, working hand in hand with those leaders and offering up our recommendations based on data trends that we see. I also, yeah, I love this team so much. It's a fabulous team of really, you know, go-getters. I think that they all have a general fearlessness of the unknown because we get thrown a lot of new requests every day. And like Hailey said, we're learning something new every day. So this role has a lot of ambiguity. And I think folks that aren't scared for new challenges do really well in this role. So those are just some of the things that I really enjoy about being here and working on this team.
And Lori got one question before we go. Lori asks, we have a lot of members in our Healthcare Heroes Force group, healthcare HLS background, who are looking to break into this career. Do you have a need for such demographics of applicants?
Absolutely. I feel like there are so many transferable skill sets from that group to what we do. I bet you've managed lots of different records and you've worked with lots of different partners. You've collaborated with folks, like that's the same type of stuff we do on our team. So like I said, I welcome all different types of backgrounds.
Excellent. Perfect. Thank you. So before we close, I'd like to thank Alice and Hailey for co-hosting tonight's session. It's been awesome having you here and getting your perspective on the topics we discussed. So I'd like to thank you both. And with that, thank you so much for attending. I hope to see you next week. And everyone have a great Wednesday night. We'll see you next week.
Thanks, everybody. Appreciate
Thank
it.
you.
Thank you.
Bye.
Have a great week.